Drop the camera down a little bit. Everybody say cheese. Oh. Let's see, we got a full house tonight.
Yeah.
Almost. We need 2 more to get a full house, but 22 people viewing. All right, let me get rolling. It's Thursday night, 9 o'clock on the Eastern Coast anyway. And this is Gene Jensen, and I am going to sit here and do a live hangout. First of all, I want to thank all my subscribers. I failed to do that the first few times, but I couldn't do this without you guys, and without you guys watching and telling your friends about me and just simply subscribing. You know, I enjoy these hangouts are pretty cool because I enjoy just interacting with everybody. But you know, the videos that I made over the years are the core of my teaching. So here it's just more or less I just pick a topic and we just talk about it, and it's not just me talking, it's the people down at the bottom of the screen you know, asking questions and giving their experiences and so on and so forth. So the rule is if you got a question, ask it. I don't care how dumb it is, because you know, even the dumbest questions need to be answered. So anyway, thanks again. Thanks for my subscribers. This YouTube ride that I'm taking right now is pretty fun, and like I said, I couldn't do it without you guys. Let's see. The topic for today is fishing deep or fishing offshore. When you say the biggest thing about fishing deep is it's all relative to the lake that you're fishing. Okay. Some lakes, deep water is only 5 feet, and some lakes, deep water is 50 feet. And so when I'm saying offshore structure, I mean whatever the fish are going to be holding on out away from the bank. You know, a cast, 2 casts, 3 casts, a half a mile off the bank. Places that you can find fish if you go looking for them. Okay, and be forewarned, this is not for the bank fishermen. I mean, you'll learn some stuff. You'll learn how to attack a point and things like that. But I'm talking about being on a boat and going out and using your map and your mapping software if you have one on your GPS and stuff like that. And they've got mapping software on cell phones now, on your iPhones, and you can use that if you need to and stuff like that. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about, and that's what I really wanted to hit. This isn't going to be a very long hangout. Like I was telling the guys before I went live, I've been on the lake the last 3 days and going to bed too late and getting up early, and I guided the last 2 days, and so I'm pretty worn out. But I'm going to try to make this last at least an hour, maybe a little bit longer. And then I'm going to go to bed because the lake I was on was almost 3 hours away. So anyway, enough of my excuses. Let's see. What are some of the things that that I look for when I'm getting ready to go on a lake in the summertime? And I'm talking about summertime offshore fishing. So what are some of the things I look for? And you guys that have been to some of my hangouts know that I am a point fisherman. The first things I look for are points on the lake. Okay. This just happens. Let it focus. This just happens to be Lake Hartwell. All right, it focused for me a minute ago. There we go. All right, this is the map of Lake Hartwell. I have never been on Lake Hartwell, and I've got 2 people that want me to guide on there. So what I do, and the thing about my guide service is I'm not scared to go to a lake I've never been to and take people out fishing, because I get to show them the raw of how I go out and find fish. So anyway, what is a point? Well, look at this. It says Long Point right here. This is the name of a park, and there's a boat ramp right there. But when you look at the map, you see the land coming out, and that's kind of a really abrupt point. All of these things right here. It's a place where the land jets out into the water and keeps on going. And these little lines right here are like on my map reading video. If you guys are wondering how to read a lake map, I've got a really good map reading video, so I'm not going to go all into that detail, but it's where the land pushes out into the lake, and it creates a creates a place where basically underwater that rises and falls. And what that causes is it causes those bait fish that are moving around to come close to the bank, or come close to the bottom, and it pushes them up, and it basically is a, excuse me, I got a cough. It's a funnel. And so it pushes the bait fish up, and if the bass are up there feeding, it makes it easier for the bass to push the bait fish up to the surface, or the bait fish come up and they're hiding on a stump and stuff like that, and they go up and they eat one. So that's what a point is. A hump is the same thing, does the same thing, or accomplishes the same thing. But a hump, and I got to get focusing. There we go. Okay, so here's a point right there. And you see this round circle right here? That would be a hump. It's an offshore object that's round now, or that the contour lines are rounded. Now it can be an oblong shaped hump. I bet you there's one right here on this point. See that where it says 60 to 80. What's really bad about these paper maps, and I'm kind of spoiled because of my Navionics chip, is that these paper maps are in 20-foot intervals, and a lot can happen in 20 feet. But you get into the Navionics software, and even with Navionics web app, and it shows you it in 1-foot intervals, so you can see all those little details of what the hump does, and whether it's long or what the steep side is and what the shallow side is. And so to back up, say that again, a point is a piece of land that jets out into the water, and a hump is like an underwater island, a bump in the island, or on the bottom. Okay. One thing that gets confusing for a lot of beginners is the term structure and cover is often interchanged. Okay. Anybody raise your hands if you've ever heard cover called structure and structure called cover. Okay. And so the thing is that the structure is the bottom contours, is how the bottom is shaped, and the places that cause the fish to hold out or hold up because of the bottom contour. Cover is a place for the bass to hide. Okay, and so cover can be somebody with background noise. Anyway, like rocks can be cover and structure. And I've seen that. You have those big chunk rocks and the bass hide down into them and stuff like that. But because it's a solid thing, they also can position on it like structure. That's the only thing that can be doubled up as cover or structure on rocks, at least in my mind. So I'm looking for points and I'm looking for humps. And then I go with my fish finder and I look and I see what's on those points and humps. And that's the first thing I do when I go to a lake in the summertime, is I'm looking for that offshore structure. And then I'm also going to look and see, as I'm going towards that offshore structure, there's certain things I'm looking for. I'm looking to see what the average depth of the bait fish are. And that gives me an idea of either where the thermocline is or where the bait fish want to be at that point in time. So I'm going across the lake and I'm looking for these humps and I see balls of bait fish, or I see schools of any kind of fish at 20 feet. So I see a lot of them at 20 feet, and I see a few at 50, and I see a few at 10, but the majority of them are at 20 feet. I'm going to go up on that hump and point, and I'm going to start by looking at the 20-foot depth, or between the 15 and 25-foot depth. And I'm just going to scan around that whole hump or scan around that point at that depth and look for cover that's on that structure. Okay, I'm looking for brush piles, rock piles, I'm looking for stumps, I'm looking for grass. And I got a lake I fish right now where the grass starts, the shallowest part of the grass is at 14, 15, 16 feet and goes all the way out to 24 and 25 feet at the deepest point of the grass. And there is no grass shallow until you get way back in the backs of the creeks. And so I'm looking for stuff like that are going to hold the bass, or that's going to hold the bait fish. And so I'm going to go around, and then if I see those, I mark them on my GPS, and I go back and I fish them. And so then it becomes a mental. Actually, before I go into, I was going to go into what lures and stuff to use. But another offshore structure that I forgot and I put down in my notes are ledges. And I did not look for one on this map. Okay, when we talk about ledges, we talk about it's an offshore piece of structure. You have cliff walls that come down into the lake close to the bank, and those are called bluff walls. Okay, and everybody that I know calls those bluff walls. But a ledge is basically a straight or a fairly straight drop off out off of shore. And so, and I don't have my Pickwick map in here, or I'd show you a really good ledge. But basically, it comes out shallow, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet, whatever, and then it drops down to 25, 30, 40 feet. I'm thinking of a ledge on Pickwick that I like to fish. And so, what I'm going to look for once I figure out where those bait fish are holding, or about what depth those bait fish are holding, I'm going to look for a ledge on my map that the top of that ledge is at that depth. And what that causes is all these bait fish are swimming out in that deeper water, and they come up and they bump up against that ledge in shallow water, and there's a bass sitting up on top of that ledge. So the bass that are feeding are going to be positioned up there. Okay. So how do you fish these structures, and how do you fish the cover line structures? It's kind of like when you're running the bank. You look and see what you've got, what challenges you have to be able to fish them effectively without, one, getting your bait hung up on every cast, and two, spooking the fish when you're fishing them. The thing I love about fishing deep, and when I say deep, for me it's 12 feet and deeper, I can position the boat over top of them and not scare them. Okay, and that's that's an average. Now, if it's super clear water, like I was fishing on Lanier today, and Lanier you can see 16 feet deep, and that's your own eye, 20 feet, 15, 20 feet deep is how deep I feel comfortable getting on top of the bass without spooking them. Okay, and so then you can get over top of them with your trolling motor, and you can drop a drop shot down on them and catch them. How many of us have? How many of you guys have experience fishing deep offshore structures? Anybody? Kind of a tough thing to do. What are some of your favorite baits to fish offshore?
Most of the time I like to throw in a deep diving crankbait.
Right.
Some sort of like a Norman DD22.
Yeah, and a DD22 runs about 16 feet deep, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
16, 17 roughly.
Yeah, depending on your line diameter, but yeah, a DD22 is great, but then again, you're limited to 16 feet.
Yeah,
unless you kneel and reel, which is great because on I wouldn't say majority of lakes, but on a lot of lakes, 16 feet is deep, and that's why I would be cranking in that grass that's between 14 and 26 feet deep. Is I'd be throwing a 6XD or a D22, something that runs 16 feet deep, and now they're finally coming out with some that go, or a lot of different brands are coming out with some that go 20 to 25 feet deep. Now you can get even deeper on them, and what was the challenge with those deep diving crankbaits is that they're so hard to crank, and they can wear you out during the day because there's so much resistance to get them down that deep.
Well,
now there's some geniuses out there that have AutoCAD, and they're designing crankbaits that can go down that deep without wearing you out. The one I'm excited about is the one that I saw at iCast by Duo Realis, and they've got a diver coming out that's 25, 26 feet deep, and it is nothing to turn that thing. It does not wear you out at all. So,
that'd be great.
I'm excited about that one. And I got a chance to interview one of the pros about it, and it was pretty cool. And me, one of the things I'm really studying this year and last year are crankbaits. That's why I don't have any crankbait videos, but that one square bill crankbait. There's so many details to it that I want to learn all the details before I teach it. And so because it's such an awesome tool, I want to be able to, to give you guys all the little details that I've learned. And if I haven't learned them, of course I can't teach them. So anyway, a deep diving crankbait. Anybody else?
Carolina rig.
Yeah. That's my bread and butter. And what's good about a Carolina rig for you?
The weight, really, I can drag it in grass.
Okay. Yep.
Another thing is with a Carolina rig, you can cover a lot of ground.
Yes, and that's the advantage to it. It's not like a Texas rig where you're throwing to an object. You can get up on a point and you can fan cast that point and you're not covering it super fast, but you're covering it faster than a lot of things that can go that deep.
I like the Carolina rig because it's one of those things you can throw and You can feel what's on the bottom a lot quicker than other baits and stuff.
Yep, and you know what's
Definitely.
funny? I will tell you till the day I die that I would rather do. I'd rather slam my hand in a car door than fish a Carolina rig. But I always have one on the boat, and I always end up fishing one at least once every day. And especially when they get deep, is because was it 3 years ago on Clark Hill? I found them on where a creek channel actually ran into the river channel, and they were on right in that classic little joint where those two come together. They were 50 feet deep.
No way.
That was the only usable oxygen on the lake that summer because the Corps of Engineers had totally ruined the water quality by letting the water get all the way down as low as it got. So literally, I call it my sandwich cast. You cast it out, you give it a lot of slack, you sit down, you eat a sandwich, and you start dragging. But when you catch them that deep, you get a feeling of accomplishment because it's pretty awesome. You get them up, and then you take it off the hook off real quick and let them go back in the water so they can get back down, so they don't float. Their swim bladder doesn't fill up or doesn't expand to the point where they can't swim back down. But it's pretty cool to be able to catch it. Say that I've caught a bass 50 feet deep, and another thing is a drop shot for that deep, things like that. But you're limited once you get past like Trent said. Once you get past that 16-foot depth, or now the 20-foot depth, now we get these 20-foot deep divers, you're limited to what you can throw. So you're throwing heavy things, jigs, Carolina rigs, drop shots, a heavy Texas rig if you've got a brush pile you're throwing to. And I say that, and I haven't really explained myself. Like was said, the Carolina rig, you can cover water. You throw it out, make a long cast, drag it back to the boat. Make a long cast, drag it back to the boat. Well, a Texas rig doesn't quite work out that way. You can throw it out and hop it back to the boat, and they work it somewhat like a Carolina rig, but it's more suited for pinpointing a brush pile or a grass line or whatever else, and throwing out to that grass line and letting it sink down into it, shaking it a little bit, hopping it a couple times, and bringing it back to the boat. Is more and it's weedless and everything else, so it's more what it's designed for. And so if I find something like that, a rock pile, a brush pile, a grass line, I'm going to position myself at a depth where I can get in a distance where I can get to it and cast to it and bring it back to the boat and fish it, fish it effectively. But let's talk about Carolina rig. First of all, I was able to talk to the guys at EcoPro. And I know you guys were in here last time or the time before that. I was talking about those cylindrical Carolina rig weights that I was wanting somebody to make. Well, I think EcoPro is going to be able to make them. I'm hoping. And so anyway, I told him, I said, look, if you make those things, I will promote them like there is no tomorrow. Making them so I can get that.
That was probably me because I'm starting a new brand, and as long as you have a prototype, I can probably recreate it.
Yeah, well, they've got the mold from True Tungsten.
Oh yeah.
They bought True Tungsten. They bought all the molds that True Tungsten had, so they're pretty sure it's on mothball. So I just had to show it to them and say, find it. Oh, and make me some baits. So I'm hoping that they do, and that way they've already got the way to get it out on the market and everything else. And that way, if you were to make them, you wouldn't get in trouble because they actually own the mold and own the rights to make them to start with. So, and that was my biggest worry, is that somebody would have to change the design to keep from getting in trouble with them. So, you know how the fish
They own the mold.
Start copying baits. But anyway, so let's see, drop shot. Would you fish a 1/4 ounce drop shot weight in 25 foot of water?
Never.
Yes.
Or to get to the bottom. See, if I'm playing what I said, if I'm playing the video game, like I say, where I'm trolling over top of the brush pile and I see a fish and I drop down, I want to get that bait down quick. You don't have to get it to the bottom. Say I'm in 25, 30 feet of water and I see a fish at 15. I'm going to get over top of it, and I'm going to drop that bait, that drop shot, right next to my trolling motor, and I'm going to watch it fall all the way down, and then I'm going to stop it it's a spinning rod. I'm going to stop it with my hand right at 15 feet. I'm going to flip the bail and I'm going to shake it.
How do you know it's at 15 feet?
You can see it on your fish finder.
Oh, okay.
You can see it falling. You see the line on your fish finder go all the way down, and when it gets to 14 feet, you stop it. And you get that you stop that weight or that worm right in front of that fish's nose. You just scare the crap out of it. You think it's going to bite? Yeah, most of the time it does. You know, and it's a great bait for fishing those suspended fish. And then,
Did you do that at Lanier today?
Oh, I did it all day yesterday and today. And you drop it down. A lot of times, if they don't hit it right then, you can let go and drop it again and drop it down to the bottom, and you'll see the fish follow it down to the bottom. And a lot of times when that happens, when they follow it down to the bottom, I don't keep my line tight. I let it go completely slack so that worm will actually fall all the way to the bottom, and it'll fall really slow, and then it gets to the bottom, and then a lot of times they pick it up on the bottom.
Yeah.
And pick it up, and the fish is on.
Yeah, I fished.
Do what?
Go ahead.
I fished Lanier today, and I was drop shotting as well. It worked pretty good.
How was it for you?
I think I saw you on the lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You come try to run into me?
What weight do you use in, like, I'd say 12 to 18 feet of water when you're drop shotting? Would you use like a half ounce or like a 3/8?
I always use either a 3/8 or a half ounce.
Okay.
You really go that heavy?
Yeah, because I want to get it down there. I don't want to mess around.
Oh, wow. I
Does
usually
it pick up a lot of vegetation, though?
No, because I use I don't use the round ball. I use either the teardrop or the cylindrical ones.
Yeah.
And Lanier doesn't have a lot of vegetation anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't have much grass at all.
Right, and if I'm fishing brush piles, I take a #1 worm hook, just an offset worm hook that's a thin wire, and I Texas rig my worm instead of putting it on a regular drop shot hook.
Is that the RoboWorm one, or?
Yeah, and then you got to realize
Yeah, that's what I use.
you got to set the hook really hard. You don't just start reeling like you do with a
Right,
regular.
right.
You got to hammer it home. So, but
What would you use?
Emil, you going out tomorrow or anything?
No, I wish. I went out today, and then I went out on Sunday.
The big ones are in the brim beds.
Oh yeah, I know. I threw a dude up there in the shallow water, and that's how I was catching them. The brim bed eaters. They're really.
Yeah, we found probably 6 or 7 wolf packs of big spots, and there were big largemouth mixed in. I caught that big fish that I caught Tuesday that I put on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't see that.
That was. It looks like it's about 9 pounds. It was 5 pounds 11 ounces. It was so out of shape. It was skinny as a rail.
Yeah, I caught my personal best spot today, actually, on Lanier. So that was pretty awesome.
How much what did it weigh?
It was like 4, and I'll try.
About 4 pounds. Kind of breaking up a little bit. So. Dude, that's huge.
That was nice fish.
Yeah, it was awesome. It felt like setting a hook on a rock or something. That was insane. Caught it on a jig.
I caught my personal best yesterday, too. That's funny.
Really?
6.4.
How much?
6.4 pound largemouth.
Wow.
But I'm up in Minnesota, so we don't get too much size up here.
Yeah, that's huge for Minnesota. The thing before I lose this thought, the thing I love about spotted bass is that if you look at a spotted bass in profile, their tail is really big, like a smallmouth, and a 2-pound spotted bass feels like a 4-pound largemouth when you have it on.
Even bigger, a 2-pound spot feels like a 6-pound largemouth. I mean,
you're sure you've got a huge fish on because they fight hard. They got that big old tail, and
I thought I had a striper when I set the hook on that fish today. It was insane.
And their body is shaped like a torpedo, so they fight really good. I love that's one of my favorite fish to catch.
Yeah, it's funny watching those tournaments when those guys are flipping and they hook a spot and they think they got a 6-pounder on there. They're disappointed.
Yeah, I fish Logan Martin a lot, and I've just gotten used to it at this point because I'm living over here.
I love that spot lake. Let's see. Let's try to get back on topic just for a few more minutes because I don't have a whole lot left on my notes. But jigs are another thing that you can fish on points. They drag
That's exactly how I caught mine.
Yeah, you can drag them like a Carolina rig. Now, what is the best dragging jig?
Football?
Football. Yeah. And why is that?
Because it stands the lure up, or it stands your trailer up because it's so heavy when you're dragging it along the bottom.
Right. And it also shakes really good when it's sitting on the bottom.
There you go.
You know, and I know some of you guys don't remember this, but Mike McClellan won a tournament here on Clark Hill one year, and he was fishing a football head jig. And what he was doing is he was dragging it until he hit a rock. And we have these scattered white rocks at about 10, 15 feet all over Clark Hill. Dragging it until it hit a rock, and then shaking it and stopping and shaking it and stopping. And he wasn't moving the bait, he was just making it do this. And that's when he'd get bit. And a football head jig is perfect. And also when you're dragging them, a lot of times it wiggles like this as you're dragging it. So it causes that trailer to do this as it's dragging. And also does that when it's falling. It'll wave like that. So, well, I guess it wouldn't because you got all that stuff all the skirt and everything else with the drag. But if it didn't have a whole lot of skirt, it would probably wiggle. I wasn't even thinking about that. But it hits the bottom, you drag it along, and you shake it, and you drag it along, and you shake it. So you can fish it like a Carolina rig. And depending on how deep it is or how fast you want it to fall is how heavy you throw it. And why do you want to control your fall rate? Because a lot of these fish, especially on Lanier this week, you could tell the spotted bass were ready to eat because they were suspended up off the top of up above the brush piles and up off the bottom. Because they eat up a lot more than what bass do. But when their fish are deep, even largemouth, they're looking up, and so you want them. If they're suspended off, you want that jig. You don't want it to go really fast past them. You want it to fall past them, and if they don't bite it, you want them to be able to follow it down to the bottom. And so that's one of the advantages of just controlling your depth. If I'm fishing 50 feet deep, I'm throwing a 3/4 ounce or a 1 ounce jig. You know, because it takes forever to get it down there. Once again, the sandwich cast. And so, let's see, what's the other one? We talked about the deep dive crankbait. We talked about Texas rig.
What do you use the most for suspended fish? Like halfway, you know, you're fishing 20 feet of water, you're seeing a bunch of fish at 12 to 14 feet. What are you throwing primarily?
Primarily, I'm throwing something that I know the fall rate. In other words, yeah, I want a bait that falls a foot a second because I'm bad with numbers anyway. So I don't want to do math while it's falling. So what I'm about to try is that spy bait, that Dua Realis spy bait. I'm about to start trying that thing, but that's a whole different ballgame. I just bought my first ones today, so I can't say anything about them. But a fluke with a 1/4 ounce weight on it.
Okay.
You know, something like a bell sinker sitting on it, or a weighted hook or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I can make that cast out, and I can let it sink to the depth. And you got to remember, with fishing line, and when you're reeling it in, the faster you reel it in, the more it's going to rise. So I like to, when I'm fishing for suspended fish, I like to use a spinning rod because most of them are 5:3 to 1 or 5:2 to 1 gear ratio, so they can reel it slow anyway.
Okay.
And you throw it out, and you give it slack line, and the other reason I like a spinning rod is because you can just lift your rod and it gives you plenty of slack line. Count it down, and then click your bail and just start reeling really slow. Do it with fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon sinks, so it has less resistance in the water anyway, so you can keep it at that depth. And just reel it really slow, give it a couple of jerks, because you know you always want to change direction when you're reeling something a consistent speed. So give it a couple of jerks. Another good thing is a crankbait that dives that depth too.
Yep.
You know, but you still, if you're not hitting something, you're less likely to get bit. So you want to vary your speed, or you want to jerk your rod. Now, my observation, and I may be totally wrong with this, but in the last two summers that I've been throwing a deep diving crankbait, I found that I do not get bit by jerking it. It's bit on a deep diving crankbait when I change the speed. And I'll be real fast, and then I'll slow down. And I'll reel fast, and I'll slow down. Not really fast, but just speed it up a little bit and slow it down a little bit. But if I jerk the rod, for some reason, I don't get bit. You know, but a square bill, on the other hand, if I'm reeling and jerking, I'm getting bit. So I don't know. You know, maybe somebody will email me that's a lot more experienced with a crankbait. But for me personally, if I'm not hitting the bottom, or I'm not hitting structure, or I'm not ticking the grass, with a deep diving, I'm just changing the speed up. So.
I've had that same problem, and I found that it's sort of about like usually I use fluorocarbon when I'm throwing a deep dive and crankbait just because it sinks faster, and when I throw it and I try and jerk it around, it just seems that it doesn't really affect it. I've done like a swimming pool test, and you really can't get the deep dive and crankbait in the swimming pool, but me and my friend live near a pond where we can get in the water and see what happens, and we just go underwater and we can look at the bait and what it's doing. And my friend told me that the bait doesn't move, it doesn't change much when you jerk your rod, and he said you're just wasting energy.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's cool. So that makes sense. But but what you're looking for with those crankbaits is you want it to change something to cause that bite. Now, one thing that I did learn, I went to the Bass University and learned this from I can't remember what crankbait guy I learned it from, but anyway, when you're throwing deep divers, and I watched Kevin Van Dam do this on the one of the broadcasts of the Major League Fishing, and I wondered what he was doing because I knew he was cranking hydrilla. And he was cranking it with a DT6 and a DT5, and so he was a 5XD and a 6XD, and he chunked that sucker out there, and he would bring it, and just as it was getting to the boat, I saw him popping his rod, and so I'm like, what in the world is he doing? Well, I found out that your bait gets down to its optimum depth, to its maximum depth, and then just as it starts to come up, if you pop your rod, drop it to a slack line and pop it really quick, it actually backs that bait up. And so, what I was told is a lot of your bites from those fish that follow your deep diver, a lot of those bites come when on that pop, and it's just a pop, and it just causes it to come up and then back up into the fish that's following.
Like how close to your boat?
It's kind of a feel thing. And it's kind of, if I had to pick an angle, it's like 30-degree angle off of your boat.
Okay.
If I had to pick an angle, but it's a feel thing. You feel it digging, you feel it digging, you feel it digging, and all of a sudden you just feel a slight change, and that's when it's starting to come up. And so, and once you get that timing, you understand where it does that change, then you start to pop it, and it does that, and it backs up.
You pop it the entire time back to the boat while you're reeling? No?
Pop it a couple times and then kill it for a split second and then reel it up to your boat.
Gotcha.
So I've gotten bit a lot doing that. And there are some pros that say that 80% of their bites come off of it. I can't say that for me because maybe I'm not doing it quite right. But a lot of mine, I've had quite a few of them do that. You just pop it, backs up. Same thing with swim baits when you're doing swim baits. Throw a swim bait out, the big swim baits. If you see the fish following it to your boat, you need to change something. And what you usually will change is that you're casting it out, and you bring it, and as it gets to just before you start to see it from your boat, kill it. And you're doing the same thing a fish would do if it was coming towards your boat. It comes towards your boat and it sees your boat. What does it do? Stops, looks, and then swims away. So you're going to do the same thing with your swim bait. You bring it up, and just as you see it, you stop it. And if there's another a bass following it, you have a good chance of getting bit right about there. And then reel it up.
It's a good
You
tip.
fish swim baits on Lanier yesterday?
Yeah, I didn't get a bit on any of them. I couldn't get a bit on a single one of them. And I've got, the bull herring and the bull shad, and I've got a ton of decent hard, jointed swim baits. So.
No top water either.
Yeah. You can't keep me from throwing top water, but I wouldn't catch anything big. They were all little. I did catch one decent one day before yesterday, I think, on top water out on a hump. But nice. The big ones were out chasing bluegill.
I never throw buzz baits, but you inspired me to start throwing buzz baits, and that's what I caught my 6.4 on yesterday.
Hey, that's awesome. When they're shallow and feeding, man, that is a big fish bait, and you just have to
right on a point. There was a river that went through the lake, and there was a point, so there was a lot of rushing water, and I just pitched it under a tree right at the edge of the shoreline, and it was just sitting there waiting for it, probably in like a foot of water. That's it. So.
Hey, you know what? You just reminded me of something that I want to talk about that I didn't write down. Okay, and I even talked about it a second ago, but I didn't even think.
still there?
I think he might have muted himself by accident or something.
No, I said that you're drunk.
Nope,
Go
I muted myself.
Oh. It popped up on my screen and said that someone else had muted you.
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Now, this looks like a good enough spot. Let's get to a major creek channel. Okay, I'm going to go way up and back out. Okay, this is a major creek arm. Everybody agree with that, I hope. Okay, and then this is the river channel that runs right here. All right, so let's talk about a good summertime spot. A good summertime spot is where that channel, which is represented by this dash, let me get where this dash line is a creek channel, right? And this is the river channel. So the areas I like to look for in the summertime is where those come together. And I'm going to look up in this area. Whoops, let's get the camera up there. I'm going to look up in this area right here where those come together. I'm going to fish this little island right here and this little point right here, and this hump if it says that's a number 15 marker buoy, but I don't know how deep that is. Probably 80 feet, so it's not probably too deep. If it was shallower, I'd fish that hump. Here's another good location right up here. Get this set up. This is a better representation of it. You got two rivers that come together, the Tugaloo and the Seneca. Okay, and so this whole area right here is kind of a key spot, and they will hang out, you know, on those points on that hump in 20 foot of water. And I guarantee that's a community spot, and there's probably brush piles on it, you know, and somebody's put a brush pile on it, and you got a bend in a creek channel that runs right along it. See this creek that runs up here? And so you got a creek channel that comes in and two rivers that come together. Ideal spot. And why is that? Because the river channel and the creek channel is the highway for the bait fish. That's what they use to go up and down and in and out and everything else. To hang out during the daytime out there, and then when the sun gets down or you get low light conditions, they're going to move up a little bit shallower, and they're going to move up into those points and humps, or up in those points and grass or wherever else is shallow. So anyway, I can't believe I forgot to cover that. But ideal place, and you just, you know, you look at what you've got and you choose what you want to fish, and it's usually whatever you got confidence in, or whatever the mood the fish are in. So anyway, let's see. That's deep fishing for me anyway. That's kind of how I attack a new lake. With this lake being Hartwell, you know, and like I said, maybe in the next month I'm going to be up there fishing it, and I've never fished it, and I'm going to guide it the very next day. So I'm going to go look for points and stuff that are out on the main lake that are close to where two places come together, and then I'm going to hope that some local guys put a brush pile out there, you know, or there's a tree out there or something like that. Another thing I look for is if it's got marker posts or things like that, or docks. Docks are another thing in the summertime. I look for the deep docks. I said it in my mystery tackle box slam that I did the other day. Is I look for deep docks, and what I mean is the docks that are closest to the channel, closest to the deepest water, and that will attract. You know, the bass will hang out in there all day long, because all they got to do is go to go deep is just go down underneath and go down to the bottom underneath that dock, if that dock's in 20 feet of water or that 10 feet of water. And then when he wants to come shallow and feed or whatever, he just got to come up and he feels safe no matter where he's at. So that's an ideal spot, and it usually holds very fast. Now you usually only catch one, maybe two off of each dock, but those kind of places are the kind of places you can go back to 4 or 5 times a day and catch a fish off of them every time you go back. You know, because they're just always fish there. And you just got to appeal to whatever the mood is. You know, dockfish is a whole different world, because you're pretty much a whole different kind of bait that you're fishing with, because you can't skip a Carolina rig. So I'm going to be throwing a jig. Heaven forbid I'm throwing a Cinco on a spinner rod. You guys know how I feel about fishing a Cinco. But I'm going to fish a Cinco underneath the dock because it skips like a dream. You know, things like that. Frog. You know, anything that I can skip, I'm going to be, you know, trying to get it as far underneath that dock. My favorite time to fish dock is between 11 o'clock in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon, because you got high skies and it forces those fish into that shady area. And if it's cloudy, it's a little bit harder because they scatter out and they get away from the dock and feed up and along. But when it's real sunny, they get up underneath them. So I'm going to I focus on docks and shady spots when it's real sunny. So anyway, any questions?
Yeah. I have a herring run coming into a pond that I usually fish at,
Yeah.
and I would think that there's a lot of stuff there, but there's never stuff until you get about 20 feet away from it. Do you think it'd be because of the salt water, or just because the herring would scatter when they come out?
I think it's because the herring scatter.
Okay.
Yeah, I really do. So I mean, it's just. Is it? So you're saying it's brackish water?
Yeah, it's brackish water in that one area of the pond, but as you get farther away from that, it's definitely fresh water.
Why is it brackish?
The herring run, I believe, is brackish to salt water.
Okay, all right. But yeah, we get yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. I'm thinking shad off the top of my head, so because we have shad run up the Savannah River every year to go catch those.
Yeah, we have shad, we have sunfish, yellow perch, and some ponds have herring.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What would
All
you
right.
use to imitate herring?
Do
What
what
would
now?
you use to imitate the herring?
To what? You're breaking up a little bit.
What would you use to imitate the herring?
Actually, because they're now, I'd use either a larger fluke. And I'm assuming they're pretty good sized herring if they're making a run.
5 or 6 inches usually.
Yeah, I'd use a fluke because it kind of has that same profile. If I didn't want to spend money on these swim baits, I have a couple of swim baits that are actually herring swim baits. They're made by Mike Buca or Buca, and it's called a bull herring, but they're $45-$50 a piece. But they have the same shape and the big eye, and they look just like a herring. They have the herring tail and everything else. And then there's several other swim baits that can mimic a herring pretty good. What is it called? The Sexy Swimmer by Strike King. I'm not even sure I'm pretty sure they still make it because it's in their catalog. But,
Yeah, they still got they have like different colors called so like blueback herring and stuff. Strike King has a lot of baits out that are colored for herring. That's what I was gonna say. Like they have spinner baits and heavy cover jigs and everything made for herring.
We have several popular lakes around the country that have herring in it. Lake Hartwell, where they're holding the FLW championship this month or this coming month. It's a blueback herring lake, and then did I say Hartwell? I mean Murray. Lake Murray's a blueback herring lake. Clark Hill, my lake, is a blueback herring lake. So a lot of these companies are starting to make herring-shaped baits. So, and I know that swim bait, that fixie swim, is going like $14 or $15, which seems like a lot for a lot of us. I don't like to spend that much money anyway. But when you're talking swim baits, that's pretty inexpensive hard body swim bait. But and it holds up pretty good.
Alright, so for the 5-inch flukes, would you use a 4 or a 5/0 hook?
5/0 for
Alright.
You can get away with a 4/0 really, but I like a 5/0.
Okay.
So, but we got about 20 minutes to goof off because I'm pretty much done talking about the.
Do you have any videos on punching jigs?
Not yet. I'm waiting until either our hydrilla gets up on Clark Hill or I can get to a lake that has some that are matted. I have a feeling that Clark, since we've had kind of cooler weather the last few days, but I'm not going to be able to get out on Clark Hill until after the kids go to school on Wednesday. But I want to try to go see if they're shallow and I can go pitch into the cover that's shallow. But we don't have any matted grass yet, so maybe I'll make a trip to Gunnersville one day.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. The grass is matted up. I just left there a couple weeks ago.
You don't have to twist my arm to get me out to Gunnersville. You just have to convince my wife to let me go. Because I love that lake.
That's my downfall is jigs. I mean, I've been throwing a lot of swim jigs just because I have confidence with a spinner bait, so it's very similar, except you got the chunky trailer on it. But, with punching jigs and football jigs, I'm still having a lot of trouble with them. Yeah. And I see guys popping out big boys with the jigs all the time, so it pisses me off when I'm out there. I can't catch those big suckers like those guys do in tournament days.
Now, do you have a lot of matted grass where you're fishing?
Oh, Minnesota, all the lakes are just filled up right now. It's all heavy cover.
All right, I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put punching and flipping grass in a nutshell. Okay, I'm gonna try to make it as detailed and unboring as possible.
Good.
You pick a grass line, and I'm assuming you have grass lines, right? And I'm hoping that you're fishing from a boat because it's difficult to do it from the shore. But if you fish it from the shore, you can do it. You just have to walk a lot.
I'm in my boat. Yeah.
So set yourself up on a grass line, and I like grass lines that have some ins and outs to them. They're not a straight line, because we get plenty of the places for the bass to hide, to ambush whatever's swimming up and down the grass line. Set you up a punching rig. I don't punch with jigs. I like to punch with a Texas rig with a heavy tungsten weight.
Okay.
And the tungsten weight being pegged, and the hook being a flipping hook, or what they call it. And then it's snelled, and that's all going to be in my video here shortly. You're going to make me want to do one next week. And the reason you snell it is because when you set the hook, it causes the tip to turn up into fish. So you get a good hook set. But anyway, so you're wanting to locate fish in that grass bed. Cover water, and your pitches and your flips are just flip. You want to flip at the edge, and you want to flip 2 and 3 and 4 feet in those kind of intervals. Okay, and it's just to flip it in, let it sink down to the bottom, shake, lift it up to the top of your canopy, and shake, bring it back in, and make another pitch.
So that's that quick. It's like a 20-second kind of thing.
If that long.
Okay.
Watch. I tell you what. Watch when we get off of here today. Go and watch my my MTB slam for July that I just put out on Monday. And the last fish I catch doing it, and I actually showed. Actually, the next last fish I hooked, I lost doing it, and then the next one I turned around, I caught another one doing it, and watch how fast I go in and go out of the cover.
Okay.
And that's how I'm doing it. And you're not bringing it back. You're not working it back to the boat. What you're doing is you're punching through that canopy, because there's hardly anything underneath that canopy, because the leaves fall off or they're just gone because they can't get any sun anymore. You know, only leaves collecting sun and going through photosynthesis is the top. And I actually showed the next last fish I hooked, I lost doing it, and then the next one I turned around and I caught another one doing it. And watch how fast I go in and go out of the cup. Okay, I'll just turn you up in a second, Drew. I've got that lag going on because you just jumped in. Anyway, so it goes in and literally you punch through and you surprise the fish, and that fish is either going to come down towards your bait and hit it down there while you're shaking it, or you bring it up to the top and underneath that canopy and you shake it under that canopy and he's going to grab it there.
Okay.
Okay, and set the hook hard and fast. It's a 2-turn wham, just like that.
Are you using braid for those types of matting, like punching jigs?
I'm using 60-pound braid.
Okay.
I don't care how clear the water is. That fish does not have time to say, "Oh, is that fishing line?" He sees something come through, he grabs it, and he has to react to it. Now, when you're working that bait, I'm gonna turn Drew up because I think I'm probably caught up by now. When you're working the grass line, what'll happen is you'll go through 150, 250, 300 yards of grass and not catch anything, and all of a sudden you'll catch one, and then 3 or 4 or 5 feet down the way you'll catch another one. And they school in there. They'll spread out, but it's still a school. They're still in an area. Fish that area really hard.
Okay.
A lot of fish, and then you'll go another couple hundred yards and not catch anything. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why they're there, except for maybe there's more bait there, maybe there's more oxygen there, you know, because the things that kind of hang out in the grass, especially up there for you guys, are bluegill.
Yeah.
You know, but you're not trying to mimic a bluegill. You're just trying to scare the snot out of the bass. Grab it before whatever it is gets away. So I just like a regular flipping bait, like a brush hog or a rage craw is one of my favorite flipping baits because the tip of it punches through really good. One of the little tricks that I use if I'm having trouble getting it into the grass, use some of that Mega Strike gel. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't actually.
Okay, it's called Mega Strike. It's
okay.
I use it because it's what I've found, and I've used all this other stuff, attractant. But the Mega Strike stays on your bait longer than any of the other gels I've ever used, and it basically lubricates your plastic, and it makes it slide down into that grass a little bit better.
Is that the stuff that they give in Mystery Tackle as an example?
No, that's oil-based.
That's an oil-based? Okay.
Yeah. This is in a tube. It's always been endorsed by Roland Martin for years and years and years. It's been around for a long time. But you basically just put a little bit on there and rub it on with your fingers and have a towel to wipe your hands off. And then, it's good for 50, 60, 70, 80 casts. It'll still be on there and help slide through. But that's only if you're having trouble getting it through. And I almost always put it on there anyway because it's a great attractor. And I'll use it in conjunction with JJ. So.
And you said that you just hook it up Texas rig for punching. You don't use actually like a punching jig, right?
No, I use a punching weight, a tungsten punching weight. And usually if you're fishing really heavy cover, you're looking at about an ounce, 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce weight. Okay. Order, I know they'll even use a 2 ounce weight. And I watched. There was one of the Major League Fishing events where Timmy Horton was punching. They were down in Florida, and he actually broke a rod setting the hook, and everybody's like, "Oh, it was a Ducket rod. It broke." Blah blah blah. I guarantee that the reason that rod broke is that 2 ounce weight hit that rod on the boat ride.
Huh.
It had hooked to the rod, and it was bouncing up against that rod, and I guarantee that 2 ounce tungsten weight cracked that rod.
Huh.
Right where it broke was right where that weight would have been.
Huh.
So that's one thing you got to be careful of. I actually broke a tip on one of mine the other day because I reeled it up close to the tip and laid it on the deck and went on a boat ride, and it broke the ceramic inside the tip from banging up against it. So
I did that at my ultralight.
yeah. So the tungsten can beat up your rod pretty good. You just got to be careful with it. But I mean, other than that, just pitch it in, let it fall down, shake, bring it up, shake, and bring it out and make another cast. And cover water until you get bit. And that's see, I told you I tried to make it short and I made it 20 minutes long.
No, thank you. Help me out.
Hey, do you guys ever have a problem with tungsten weights bothering fluorocarbon line?
If they don't have an insert. And what I want you to do is go on YouTube and search Aaron Martin insert. And he's got an amazing video on how he takes shrink tubing and he puts an insert inside of his tungsten weights, and how he does that, and that you won't have that problem ever again.
Okay.
So and you know what's funny is it was 4, 5, 6 years ago there was True Tungsten that was saying, oh, inserts are horrible because they fall out and everything else, and that's why we don't have inserts. Well, now we're getting back to putting inserts in them because they're protecting our line. So. It's kind of funny how that happens. Another thing is don't use a glass bead with tungsten.
Where do you get these inserts at?
Well, I know some of the store brands, like the Academy Sports brand, come with inserts. But basically, it's the smallest shrink tubing that you can buy at Home Depot and Lowe's.
Okay.
And Aaron Martin shows how to heat it up, stretch it so it'll slide into your weight, and then how to trim it to where it stays in your weight.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. I've only done it. I've tried it once and it worked really good, and I'm going to do it with the rest of my tungsten weights. So, yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When's the next fluke video coming out?
When's what?
The next fluke video.
I don't know. You may not have heard this. My wife got a new job as a school nurse. So prior to this, she had 2 part-time jobs. She's got a bachelor's degree in nursing, and she's a pediatric nurse. And she had 2 part-time jobs, and they were kind of whenever needed kind of jobs. So it limited my time to video to 1, maybe 2 days a week. Mm-hmm. All these videos you're seeing, I was either in North Carolina working and I had time to do it, or the ones that I was here, I did it during that 1, maybe 2 days a week. But now that she's going to be the school nurse, she's got a set schedule, and I'm off Monday through Friday. My 40-hour-a-week job is on the weekends. So I'm going from 1, maybe 2 days to 4 or 5 days a week to video. So
Nice.
you're about to see a flood.
Can't wait, man.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
The kids go back to school on Wednesday, and then I'm gonna try to do a short one on Thursday, but I'm mainly gonna focus on getting everything ready, cleaning my garage out, getting it ready to do some reviews, and getting this office and everything straightened up, and getting this part of the board finished, and then drop the board down behind me. I just got a lot of work to do, but I'm gonna try to do one quick one, maybe go fishing and do one, and come back home and do all this work. But then the following week, I'm gonna actually make myself a full-time schedule and make this kind of a full-time job. But I've also got to remember there's things that my wife did while I didn't have to do while she was that I like grocery shopping and things like that. So I'm gonna have more responsibility at home. So I keep her happy and you're always happy. So.
Do you use a wireless mic when you're filming on your boat?
I just bought one a few months ago, and so yeah, it ain't cheap, but it's worth it because one thing you guys don't see is I have a ton of videos that I ruined because of wind.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That's my next question for you.
Yeah, and I bet you 80% of my videos for a period of time were ruined by wind. And I don't know that till I get home to edit and hear the audio. And so it's horrible. I mean, it messes up, screws up big day. So I spent $375, $400 on a new mic.
What was it called? What kind was it?
Give me a second. I'll get it. It's right around the corner.
Oh, thank you. Not trying to get you up or anything.
You've been having some problems with that one too, haven't you, Fluke?
Only because I'm fat. I found out that my love handles push up against the plug when it's plugged in right here, and it causes it to come out. So the fix was to take the clip off and start putting the stinking thing in my pocket.
All right.
You asked. But it is a Asden 15BT is what it is. And this says 105 UPR, but anyway.
105.
Yeah, it's been pretty good, and the reason I got it is because it's a UHF, and so you don't get the interference from maybe somebody's ham radio.
Oh, that's good.
You said you spent about $400 on it?
About $350, $375, $400, somewhere in that range. So wasn't happy about spending that kind of money, but I was tired of ruining videos. So I was wasting more money than I would spend on that thing. But anyway, so yeah, I'm kind of excited about being able to use that from here on out. And so far, like the mystery tackle box one I did Friday, I didn't have any problems at all with audio.
Okay.
I think I've solved that problem. One more thing I need to get is that little, they call it the rat.
The windscreen?
Yeah, the real thick windscreen. Not like this one, but the one that looks like a dang fur ball.
Cattail, yeah.
Yeah, the cattail. And so I'll pick one of those up. Those are expensive. They're like $50 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be anytime soon, but eventually I'll get one. But let's see. Any more questions? We're just talking, so it doesn't
I
matter.
just want to make a comment.
Yeah.
I think since I've been watching your videos, I think you've inspired me to buy. I think I'm about 5 packs away from getting every color fluke that Zoom has out now. I bought 2 of each pack, and I just left Walmart today, and those are chunks. And I had these, but Smoke and Shad is like, I think I'm 5 away from having 2 packs of every color. And I'm gonna try and start fishing them this season.
Question: have you caught any fish on them?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Since I've started fishing them, I've been watching your videos, and I'm out of JJ's Magic. I need to order some more.
Yeah.
I think I'll do that tonight. But I've tried JJ's Magic dipped on each different color, and it seems to catch a fish on. I think I've caught a fish on maybe half the colors so far.
Let's see if you can follow directions, because I don't have one with me to show you. Take your albino fluke, okay, and your blue JJs. Don't do it in your house. Your mother will kill you.
Albino flukes.
Yep. And then you take blue chartreuse JJ's, okay, and you take a Q-tip, you dip it in your blue, and you rub it about 15, 20, 30 times on the back of that albino fluke, and then you take the other side of your Q-tip and dip it in the chartreuse and run the chartreuse down that fluke, and you just create that fluke.
So you said blue, chartreuse, and okay.
Blue on top a whole bunch of times until it gets good and blue, and then run run a line of chartreuse down both sides, and it looks just like a sexy shad.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
If you go
And then
to
with
the
the albino,
JJ
the back is sort of already blue.
Yeah, and it gets a little bit bluer. Yep.
Have you ever spilled that stuff on your hand? I was just wondering because one day I spilled chartreuse JJ's on the top of my hand, and that stuff burnt. After a while, it started irritating.
Really? You must have sensitive skin. I've never had it hurt anything, but I've got some on my hand right now.
I mean, it wasn't really painful. It was just kind of like I don't know, it was getting irritating after a while.
There's a big patch on my boat about this big. That's straight chartreuse.
But it'll disappear in about 2.5 months. I spilt a whole bottle in the bottom of my boat. My carpet's tan, and I said I'm not going to do anything to it. I just want to see how long it lasts. And about 2.5 months later, I noticed it was gone.
Is that after rain? Because I put my boat under a garage.
No, I keep mine covered. So
it just happened yesterday. So I'm pressure wash it or just
pressure washer. Yep.
Yeah, you can pressure wash it, but another thing you can do is go get you some isopropyl alcohol at the drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
And pour it on there and scrub it a little bit.
Okay.
That'll help get that oil up. The oil that's actually the garlic oil, and so that'll at least help the smell. And then there's another mixture of vinegar and Formula 409, and that'll get the dye up a little bit too. That'll help clean the dye up. And it's a 50-50 mix of white vinegar and Formula 409.
Yeah, because I've got a gray. My carpet on my boat is gray, so it's like it shows up pretty good. But it just happened the other day, so I haven't really tried to do anything about it.
Well, once it's gone, you can still see it if you get. It's pretty cool. You get a black light and shine over top of it and see what happens. So it shows up. But I mean, that's and I always tell people if you're scared that you're going to mess up your boat, don't use it. But if you want somebody to beat you, don't use it. So,
yeah, see, that's why I didn't really care about it.
Yeah, it goes away. I mean, and so it is what it is. We've all done it. We've all made stupid mistakes. Those of us that used it. I went 5 years without making a mistake, and then I didn't put the lid on all the way and put it down between my feet, and went to reached over here with my left hand and reached down to grab the bottle and the lid and the bottle fell off the lid. So.
Yeah, I spilled a whole bottle of the clear at the bottom of our boat.
JJ's son, we were staying at a cabin. I'm not going to say what state park because they might find out. But his son got a bottle of clear in the kitchen in this cabin, and it's not the bottle that breaks; it's the lid. And the lid just shattered, and he got a whole bottle of clear all over his cabin just as we were leaving.
Hey, Gene, I got another question for you.
Yeah, man.
I know you love drop shot. Who doesn't? But I was reading something on Bass Resource just a few days ago. Another way to try it out, as opposed to using the drop shot weight. I've read some articles where some guys are actually using a jig at the bottom as the drop shot weight and putting a trailer on there and giving the bass 2 presentations as opposed to 1. Have you ever tried that? And if so, how well did it work out for you?
I have. My problem is that a jig and a drop shot are 2 different hook sets.
Okay. And it's
so,
hard to differentiate which one you need to do.
Yeah, and it's hard to differentiate. So when I do that, it's a shaky head, and I use a regular worm hook and I Texas rig the jig or the worm on the drop shot.
Okay.
So no matter what, it's the same hook set.
Okay.
And so that's what I do because and maybe if I had a little bit more experience, or if they're throwing a jig, they're throwing it on heavy line anyway, so they're going to be throwing a heavier hooked drop shot.
Right.
If they're throwing a jig and they're setting the hook like a jig and the fish is on the drop shot, they're going to straighten that hook out on that drop shot.
Yeah.
So that's my only drawback with that. So I make sure that the hook is So I'm rigging them somewhat similar, so my hook sets are the same.
Okay.
You know,
How big of a hook would you recommend? 4/0, 5/0? If you're gonna tie on with the jig at the end.
with a jig, I do it like a 3 or 4/0.
Okay.
If it's a light wire jig, I do a 3/0.
Okay.
And then if it's a big jig, it's going to be a 4 or 5/0, so it can withstand that hook set. And I'm going to be doing it on 15, 20-pound test.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good question, definitely.
Gene, I've seen a video of the inside of your garage.
Yeah.
How many different color flukes do you have?
5, probably, maybe 4. I have a whole bunch of white and a whole bunch of pearl, a whole bunch of white ice, and then I keep a few of baby bass. And then I don't fish many small ponds anymore that have a lot of, I used to fish small ponds, and that's when I would use the watermelon. And they didn't have green pumpkin back then, but if they had green pumpkin, I'd be using it. But mostly white ice. But my recommendation is don't do what I did. Don't buy your white colored bait or soft plastics in bulk, because what happens is after about 2 years, they turn orange or yellow. Even the clear ones, they'll start to fade out. They'll start to change color, and what they call orange out. And so buy them a couple of bags at a time. What you're going to use that year. I thought I was going to save a whole bunch of money, and I ended up not.
Yeah. At least you get a new color to fish.
Do what now?
I said at least you get a new color to fish, right?
Yeah. So I like to buy them when Academy puts them on sale every once in a while. So I've learned not to do that with the white ones. But
How often do you fish Senkos?
Never. Those of you who watch my videos,
You like trick worms?
I consider a Cinco a turd on a hook. So, but I'll use it for skipping docks, and this was just because it skips like a dream. But I'm so anti-Cinco, I'm using the Zoom fluke tail worm, which is basically a Cinco with a fork tail on it. So I don't feel like I'm fishing a Cinco.
I hate Cincos because it's like you just can't feel them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a reason why I don't like it, except for it's just boring.
Yeah, they catch fish, no doubt, but it's not for me.
Yeah, it's just to me, same reason. For me, it's just a little boring, and if they're hitting a Cinco, I can fish them on something else. And what's funny is I get a request all the time to do a Wacky rig video. That would be a 5-second video.
The only time I use a Wacky Cinco is if I'm trying to skip. That works pretty good sometimes.
I was Wacky rigging trick worms before Cincos were even out.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that in a video. You mentioned it was a video. I think you started out flipping something with one of the Mustad flipping hooks when they first came out at the Classic.
Yeah. Yeah. The trick worms. I did it today and caught fish on Lanier. The guy I was guiding was throwing his trick worm regular weightless, and I flipped it around and threw it wacky and started catching them again. And so you can wacky rig anything, but I found the best things to wacky rig are the ones that have like a trick worm or finesse worm or a Cinco that don't have like the ribbon tail, because that'll get knotted up and stuff like that. But and fish it like a fluke, jerk pause, jerk pause, and fish will tag them if they're shallow and feeding. And what we were doing is we were fishing brim beds. The brim come up spawning, the bass come up cruising looking for a meal, and they come up in wolf packs that we call groups of bass, and they just cruise the shallows looking for brim beds. And that's how I caught that buzzbait fish too, doing the same thing early in the morning. But it was an all-day thing today because we had clouds. And you just throw the worm up in there and jerk it out and do it with a fluke too. But guess what? I didn't have any flukes on the boat. So paddle tails, but I didn't have any flukes.
Whoa.
I just got my boat back and I loaded it up with what I grabbed, and I forgot to grab the box that had the flukes in it.
I was like, whoa, Gene, without flukes.
Believe me, I looked for them. I don't fish flukes much anymore, just because I'm trying new things. I'm trying to learn new things so I can do videos on them. So I've kind of put flukes off to the side, and I use them when I want to go out and catch fish with my kids and things like that. But when I'm right now, I'm working on flipping and pitching and crankbaits and stuff like that, so I can actually make videos and sound somewhat knowledgeable, when I do. So I've already made videos of all the stuff I already know, and so now I've got to learn new stuff so I can make more videos. And that's myself.
That's like the hardest thing for me is just not trying to get stuck in that rut of fishing the same thing. Just try something new.
Yep. Yep. You just got to leave everything else at home.
Yep.
Yep. What I had to do with my square bills, had to leave them at home.
Yep. Go to.
For sure.
I did that today.
Yeah.
And when you were doing that video, Hooked Up Network, when you were down peacock bass fishing,
yep.
I saw it was like just like a shot of the I think it was a KVD HC square bills.
Yeah.
If you were throwing, I think it was, what color was that? I can't remember the name of the color it was.
Which one did I grab in that video?
It looked like a bluegill to me, sort of. It was like dark brown with black stripes on it.
Yeah.
Like a white tail.
Those KVD square bills, they don't rattle, do they?
Some of them do.
They make them with the rattles, and the silent stalkers, they don't have any rattles.
Yeah, they make some. I cannot remember the name of that color. One that I just kind of found, and I was walking down the aisle. I'm like, "What color is that?" And I said, "I don't have that one yet," and I grabbed it and threw it in the box.
Yeah.
But I can't even remember what the name of the color was. But
I'll have to find it because at my Walmart they have like a whole box of KVD stuff. It's like the spinner baits, and then you have your soft plastics and his crankbaits and stuff.
Yeah.
So I have to go and look tomorrow.
I got this one at Academy, so I don't know if you got an Academy close by, but
yeah.
But yeah, that's where I get all my striking loads up Academy with a lot of stuff twice. So I keep an eye out for what they have there. So anybody fished that the 10XD yet?
I have.
That thing's you got to throw it on a meat. I started asking questions because I haven't thrown one yet, but everybody says you got to throw it with 17-pound test or 15-pound test and a medium heavy rod.
Yeah, that's what I throw most of my deep crankbaits on anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I got 17-pound fluorocarbon tied on right now, and I don't have it tied on anymore, but I had that DD22 tied on, but I should tie on a 6XD because I'm going to Logan Martin on Saturday and try a bunch of different things up there. I haven't been up there in a while.
I would miss every fish if I fished a medium heavy rod on a deep dive crankbait because I tend to set the hook really fast and really hard.
Yeah.
Trying to get it in their mouth. And my best friend fishes with a medium heavy rod, deep dive crankbait. And I've tried it. And I couldn't.
I got 17-pound fluorocarbon tied on right now.
Hold on, somebody just jumped in.
That was Jalen.
Yeah, Jalen, I'm gonna turn you down for about 20 seconds and let it get caught up because you got an echo. But let's keep talking. I tell you what. Let me. No, I'm gonna keep recording. I can edit this out later. So, any more questions?
What's your opinion of the rods, the Ducket Ghost?
And I never hear you talk about swim baits much. I mean, I hear you talk about flukes, but never hear you talk about boot tail or paddle tail swim baits.
I'll talk about Ducket Ghost first, and then I'll talk about that. You missed that question, Trent. Trent, you missed it. But I'll get to yours in a second. The Ducket Ghost. For the most part, I'm very impressed. And if you guys know me, I don't give reviews on things unless I've had a good chance to fish them and see what they do. And the guides are all metal. There's no inserts on them, so you don't have inserts to break out and things like that.
Yeah.
The one thing that I have noticed with them is that if you do a lot of what am I doing with that thing? Basically, if you are working a bait that has a lot of drag, like a deep diamond crankbait or something like that, and you always keep your angle to your line at 90 degrees, I found that it doesn't damage your line, but it causes your line to curl up really tight, kind of like what a spin caster will do, because it's a metal tip. It doesn't damage the line any, but it causes, kind of like when you take your hair and you put it between your fingernails and pull it, it curls up.
Sure.
same sort of deal. It does that to it. It makes it curl up a little tighter. I haven't seen a bad effect because of it. I have 5 of them now. I have 2 heavy actions, 1 medium heavy, 1 medium. What's the other one? The other one might be a medium heavy, I think. So, but anyway, so I've been flipping and pitching, and I've been throwing rattle traps with them and everything else. And so far, I put my reputation on the line and say they are the best $100 rod on the market.
I agree with you. I just got one, and granted, it's the most expensive.
I've been trying to I'm thinking about switching all of my baits. So I mean, not baits. I'm sorry. All my rods over to Ducket, or at least have Duckets and another quality brand, because I have a bunch of random rods right now, and I want to try and switch over to one company.
Yeah.
Or 1 or 2 different companies, and just find a company I can stick with and use the rods. And I've fished with the Duckets before. My friend has one, and he's let me fish with it. And I definitely noticed a difference with them.
Yeah, and a lot of people, including myself, I like to stay with one brand because you get used to the grips and the handles and things like that. Casey, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying I usually use the All-Star Classic rods from Academy, like $50. So this rod being $100 feels a whole hell of a lot better.
I can't hear him either.
Yeah, Casey, did you just get muted on accident?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't hear Casey anymore. Oops. You're quiet, Casey. I stopped hearing you. But you said the All-Star rods. The very first good rods that I bought were All-Star rods. I had probably 6 of them, and I love them. I haven't bought any since Shimano bought the company and moved everything overseas. All the ones I had were all made in the USA. But I haven't heard anything bad about them anyway. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it looks like everybody's all right.
So Gene, what do you think about Skeet Ree's rods?
I use them.
We're
right, McGill.
We're still live. They're yellow and black. Anybody who knows the rivalry between Georgia and Georgia Tech knows that Georgia Tech colors are yellow and black, and Georgia Bulldogs are.
Oh Lord!
I would not be caught dead coming out of the bathroom with some Skeet Reef.
There's like 30
Not valid.
Yeah, my friend. What'd you say, Pay? My friend just said I got like 30 Skeet Reeses.
Yeah, no, he's got 30.
I'm trying to change over to 13 rods now.
Since you got Skeet Reef rods, though, have you ever had any problems with them?
Not yet.
No.
Do you fish with them aggressively, or do you just?
I fish with them aggressively, especially my cranking rod.
Every other day.
I never really had no problem out of them.
Okay, good.
What I use for my I use his spinnerbait rod a lot too, and his jig worm rod.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm pretty much a Pinnacle man because of you too. You did a rod thing with Pinnacle and Duckets, and I was like, I'm gonna try that Perfecta now, and I love that rod. That's one of my favorite rods, hands down.
They make some great rods. I got that rod sitting right in the corner of my office right now. So, but yeah, they make some great rods. They need a little work on the reels, but I'm not going into that detail. They got some good reels, and some of them need a little bit of work, but they're getting better, and I've been impressed on how they've been willing to get better and not just let rest on what they have. So, kind of happy about it, but. I told you guys I use Ducket because they're white, because you can see them on the video, and they're the best rod at that price point. And so, being that I don't like spending over $200 on a rod, and I have bought very few of my Duckets full price. I usually buy them used. Somebody selling them online or selling them at the local shop or whatever else. I get a phone call because everybody knows I use Ducket rods. I'll get a phone call from the local shop. Hey, we got 5 of them. Somebody just turned into, for consignment, and I'll go and see if I can afford them. So, because I'm cheap like that.
So, what do you think about their new reels they just came out with, the Boy Ducket reels?
I got a chance to play with two of them. When I was coming back from Wilson, I swung by Gunnersville and I went into their office and I actually got to play around with the first two that they got in.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't the same ones as the ones they introduced last year at ICAST. Those ended up having some problems, and they never even put them out on market. And they went back to the drawing board, and they came out with some. And if I had to compare them to anything, I would compare them to the Revo feel, and I've never fished with them, so this is just me holding one in my hand and turning it and spinning it and playing around with it and opening it up and looking at it, stuff like that. It's got a really good drag system. I'm really impressed with it so far. Like I said, I don't own one, and I unless they give some to me, I may not buy them because I with my wife changing jobs and her reduction in pay going in half, we kind of have to pinch pennies right now. So I'm not going to end up buying anything anytime soon. But so far so good, and only time will tell with the new rods. Like if anybody else has problems with them. And there will always be the haters. There will always be the Shimano guys. It's horrible because
I'm moving out, man.
Yeah, there's always those Shimano guys. You guys know who you are. It's an inside joke from Bass Resource. The Shimano posse that we have over at Bass Resource. So, goodness. I just looked, and I can't believe I missed looking over there. Over here at the live chat, Dan Z just asked, does anyone know where to find molds for jig hooks? They don't mold jig hooks, but you're talking about the lead that goes around the jig hooks. The Ducket mold company makes them. And there's several websites online that sell those molds. Barlow's Bait and Tackle, or Barlow's Tackle, Tackle, I think it's called Tackle Craft. It may have gone out of business, though. Jan's Net Craft. Just search do-it -it molds, and you'll be able to see them pop up. So, and that's usually the ones people use. And and Tackle Warehouse sells them too. So, anyway, any more questions? Anyone, viewer? Hold on. Somebody asked, could you explain putting backing on for braid? How much is enough and how much can you use? You got two options with backing. It's you can use electrical tape, a couple of turns of electrical tape, and I do that for my shallow schools, like my spinning reels. If I'm putting braid on my spinning reels, I'll use electrical tape for my backing. And what it does is it keeps your braid from turning on your spool when you're setting the hook or fighting a fish, because that braid, what it'll do is it'll get tight, and then it will start to turn freely on your spool. So you put backing in there to give that braid something to grip onto. And then for like a bait caster, I use about 5 layers of mono, 5 or 6 layers of mono and then braid. But if I'm wanting to save money, I'll fill up half the spool with mono and then the other half with braid, because you can put a lot of braid on a spinner on a bait caster because it's got such a light diameter. So that's the reason. Keep your braid from spinning, and it also saves you money. I do that with fluorocarbon too. Half the spool with cheap mono, and then I tie a uni-to-uni knot or a blood knot or something that ties the two lines together, and then the rest of it with fluorocarbon. So that way I can get twice the use out of my fluorocarbon. So
you never use old braid as backing?
Not old braid, because one of the tricks I do with braid is I'll use it for a while, and then what I do is I take it and I will put it on a different reel, and then use the other end of the braid.
Mm-hmm.
That was on the inside of the spool, and that's what's cool about braids, because it doesn't damage like that. And if you don't have another spool, you can just tie it to a tree or put it on a weight and run it down the street.
Yeah.
Then cut it off and go to the other end and wind it back on your spool.
Saving money, bud.
Whatever works, dude.
Yeah, for real.
I might do something crazy like throw it over the top of a tree and let it come back down, and then go over and tie to this one and reel it back through the tree. Whatever works.
Hey, Fluke, you said whenever you do that with fluorocarbon that you back it with a lot of mono. How much fluorocarbon would you recommend as opposed to the monofilament backing? How much fluorocarbon do you actually?
I would guess it depends on what I'm doing with it. Like my jig rods, I'm not making very long casts, so I may just put half a spool on, half and half.
Okay.
If I'm doing like crankbaits, it's gonna be 3/4 of that spool is gonna be fluorocarbon.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to make the longest cast I can. So like I said, it just depends on what I'm using it for.
Okay.
Gene, with with the new spool, I wouldn't say new, but with spools that have like the holes in them, I know a lot of people who use they'll tie their end of the line into there, and they'll have mono or fluorocarbon. They'll actually get cut up if they have like really nice reels. Those edges on those holes will get pretty sharp, and they'll actually cut through their line, and they'll lose their whole spool and line and their fish or lure, whatever they have on.
Yep.
I do it with braid, but like if I was using braid, do you think that I would still need that backing if I was to tie into one of those holes?
Yeah, because what'll happen is the rest of that braid on that spool will get loose. It'll fluff out, and then you'll end up getting more backlashes because it'll dig into itself more.
Huh.
You see what I'm saying? The inside of that spool will still loosen up a little bit, and then when you set the hook on a big fish or you're setting the hook on a stump like I do quite often, it digs in there a lot easier and a lot more, and it's harder to get out. And then so your next cast it's going to hammer. And anybody ever broke 60-pound braid?
That's happened to me before.
Yeah, anybody ever broke 60-pound braid on a backlash? I have. I got a $125 swim bait at the bottom of Gunnersville right now because
I broke a spook off doing.
I look for that thing, Gene. You told me about it the last time. I went and looked for it.
I will give you I'll give you the GPS coordinates so you can go diving for it because I've got them marked. But it's
how deep is it? I'll go find it. I think I've been like pretty deep in Gunnersville, just swimming before.
It's only about 8 feet deep.
Oh shoot! I'll go down there and get
it. But yeah, it's the problem with braid when you're throwing heavy weights, and I mentioned this last hangout, is that when it backlashes and you're throwing something heavy like an Alabama rig or a big swim bait or something, a couple of ounces, is the shock from that stop will break 60-pound braid. But if you use fluorocarbon or co-poly, something that has a little stretch, a little give to it, it's not going to break. It's just going to, stretch and release.
That's why, Jalen.
Shock absorber. So
I was throwing a square bill the other day and broke 20-pound braid doing that.
Oh, wow.
KVDs out in the trees.
Yeah. So if and that's why braid has its good things and its bad things. So if I'm pitching and flipping, I'm using in heavy cover, I'm using braid. If I'm throwing a frog, I'm using braid. But if I'm going to be casting, I tend to use copoly and fluorocarbon, mostly copoly, because you guys know I'm cheap. I don't like to buy a whole lot of braid. But I've seen too many big heavy baits go a lot farther than I wanted them to.
Only thing is, I don't understand why you need 60-pound braid, because I only use like 20 or 30-pound braid for saltwater spinning rods.
Mainly, I like 50 and 60 when I'm fishing grass because you can cut the grass with the braid. So you flip in and the bass takes it and he'll turn you before you get a chance to set the hook. He'll turn you around some grass, and with a heavier braid, you can set the hook, and in that hook set, that line will straighten out and actually will cut the grass, and you're able to get the fish out of the grass. Also, a lot of times what we call bringing the meat up with a salad. The bass is covered up with the grass like this, and you can get them out easier with that braid. So I use it for heavy cover, and that's about it. And with the frog rod, the same reason. I'm not going to lose that frog. But then you get into and then like I said, the casting and stuff like that, I get rid of the braid. So
do you rig up 30-pound braid on a swim jig?
No, because I'm casting it. I'm gonna use a copoly or a fluorocarbon. Use a copoly.
I'm one of those guys that uses braid for almost everything.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like I said, it's just personal preference. And I've had a few too many bad experiences with it, so I've kind of tried to settle for what for the things that have always worked for me. And I've been using the same copoly shoot for 8 years now, and 8 or 9 years, and haven't, and I've had very, very few problems with it. The only problems I ever have with breakoffs, or there are two problems. One is when I don't retie in the morning. I'm using a bait that I used the day before, and I'm fishing with an old knot, and I'll break off then. And then the other one is when I forget, and I've done this a couple times, I forget what pound test is on a reel, and I'll put like a reel with 12-pound test line on my heavy action rod and go jig fishing with it. And I'm not paying attention, and I don't realize it's not 20-pound test, and I'll set the hook and break off 2 or 3 of them before I realize that I screwed up. So, and I've done that 2 or 3 times. But
what do you normally use when you're using jigs and stuff like that?
I use 20-pound Iserline XXX super copolymer, and if I'm fishing sparse cover and stuff like that with really clear water, I'll go to 20-pound fluorocarbon, just straight fluorocarbon. Because I don't, as much as I like tying a leader on, I don't trust my knots, because if you guys have ever seen my jig hook set, I don't trust any extra knots. Hook set. So there's a few people I know that have set a hook harder than me, and one of them is the inventor of the Rage Tail, Steve Parks. He's already 6'4" or 6'5", and he sets the hook and goes up on his tiptoes. And because he fishes Lake Falcon, is one of the lakes he guides on, and so he'll flip in there and turn one of those 10-pounders with the hook set way over his head, up on his tiptoes, and if that fish wasn't on the other end of the rod, he'd fall over the back of the boat. So yeah, he's a crazy guy, but he's strong. He's got like a black belt and like a 10th degree black belt in karate or something. I don't know. He's a healthy dude for being an old man. I hope he's not watching.
Good friend to have, though.
Do what?
Good friend to have, though.
Yeah, he is a good friend to have. Yeah, he's probably one of the. If anybody ever looks him up on forums, his forum name is Big O. You know who he is. He understands the whole social media thing too. His wife does. She does a lot of that stuff when he's on the road. So, but let's see. Anything else?
Just a quick question, Gene. What's your opinion on Nanofill Berkeley?
I've never heard anything good about it.
Okay, I have a couple of spools. I gave it out at the Bassmaster Classic. Mm-hmm. Hank Parker was giving it out, and I grabbed a couple of spools, and
yeah.
I mean, I fish with it, but I don't like it for some reason.
I don't have my own opinion. It's just through forums and stuff like that, I've never heard anything good about it. But hey, I'm gonna do something different, guys. I've talked to you guys for about an hour and a half now. I want to for you guys that have been on since the beginning, go ahead and kick yourself off, and I want to get a bunch of other people on here and do about a 20-minute question and answer, and then I'm going to go to bed. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
All right, appreciate it. Take care.
All right, Steve.
All right, I'll kick out.
All right, later, Trent. Thanks, man.
Later. No problem.
Later, Gene.
Bye, man.
Peace out, dude.
Come on, take care, man. I'll talk to you later.
Peace.
Stop laughing at me. All right. Now let's see if anybody else jumps on. All right, guys. Those who are waiting to get on, if you go to my Facebook page, and there's a link in my Facebook page that you'd be able to, the Flukemaster Facebook page, you'll be able to jump on. So.
Howdy, Gene.
Hey, who's that, Alex? Oh, Emil, you were on there. You fell off.
I've been waiting forever.
Oh, yeah, I bet you have. Man, I always forget, and so I think I'm going to start doing that about every half hour or so.
I was putting in the comments.
That's pretty nice.
I was putting in the comments.
Yeah, I saw two of them, and I was like, and then that idea popped into my head. So I think that's what I'll do from here on out. Is like try to set a timer or something on my phone, and every half hour ask people to jump off and let other people on. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do this whole game plan thing. So.
I'm not getting an echo, am I?
No, not yet. So. Yeah, but I think hey Joshua, how's up? What's up, man?
I was putting in the comments.
Yeah, everybody that's coming in is going to get an echo for about 10 seconds. And then everybody's okay.
Oh, this is madness.
Cool. All right. Let me say hi to everybody. We got Alex, Christian, Elijah, Emil, Ice Guild. That's pretty cool. Joshua, Nathan, Tater.
Yeah, I'm not sure my mic is working.
It is.
It is?
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Well, hey, man, I haven't got a chance to watch this video at all, but I've been fishing a bunch lately, and I can't catch nothing. There's too many shad on here on Wheeler.
Yeah, and when there's a lot of shad, what you do is you try to find my trick, like on Oconee that has a lot, is to go to those spots that they are. Hold on, I'm going to mute people that are coming in just because they are going to have echo for a minute. I go and I look for the highest concentration of the shad, or or shad that's around cover and structure, and then I start fishing it. You know, it's tough, dude, because when there's so much food, they don't have to go very far.
Man.
Well, is your lake similar to Wheeler, the one you fish?
You know, I only fished Wheeler for a day when I was up there. The lake Wheeler reminded me of was Oconee, the one I did my MTB slam this last month on, or in July.
Okay.
So that's the one that reminds me. My home lake here, Clark Hill. The reason I'm shy to do a lot of videos on it because it's a blueback herring lake. A lot of the things a lot of your shad patterns you have to throw out the door. You know, the best top water on that lake is bluebird skies and wind. You know, and so everybody else tells you that best top water is low light conditions, you know, and some chopper wind.
Man, that's not how it is in Tennessee right now.
What do you mean?
Well, I just spent. You know where Norris Lake is in Tennessee? Do you know where the Powell River comes into Norris Lake? Who's out of Kentucky?
Yeah, at the north end, yeah.
Yes, the far end towards the dam.
Yep.
I went up there, and this past Friday, it was 92 degrees, and we found so much bait from where it's schooling, from where it's headed out of the main lake, and it's headed upriver right now. Bluebird skies all day long, and I didn't put a spook down.
That's awesome. What was the watercolor?
If you started, we got some rain earlier that week, so if you started running up to where you were getting a bunch of boat traffic, it was coming in from where the boat traffic was running in on that muddy banks and starting to push some color out. But honestly, all we did was we started at one section of the Powell River there and just started heading north, heading upriver. Every piece of wood you found in the channel bend, if you threw a spook at it at least 3 times, you were getting a hit.
Yeah, what might have happened and what I've seen in the past is that rain oxygenated hot water and put water in it, and then the stirring up of the water, and they'll move shallow and get up under that cover, and they're up there to feed. So.
Well, the guy I was working with, I don't want to throw any names out there or anything, but the guy that I was with, he actually is a guide and fishes a bunch of tournaments and has his own little jig company and everything going on. But man, he said he's been up there doing it for 6 weeks, and he's just a smallmouth river rat. And man, that's what he'll tell you. And he said You can bank on it doing that every single year. He said if you find a river system in the Tennessee River and the Tennessee Valley Authority area, he's like, you find a river and you find flowing water, he's like, pick up a spook and don't put it down.
That makes sense. It really does. Yeah, because they're going to be shot. When I get that question a lot, is when the best time is to throw top water. Is when the fish are shallow and active. And they be shallow and active in that current and that oxygenated water, because they're stacked in there, because the rest of the lake probably doesn't have a whole lot of oxygen in it, you know, unless they. So.
Because the week before that, I went out to my honey holes on the other end of the lake, the Lewiston Seaside, and caught one fish in 7.5 hours.
Wow.
Down here in Tennessee, I'm going on a river float this Saturday. It's an 8-hour river float. It's on a river that I've never been on. Do you have any tips on what to throw?
Tennessee River. What river is it?
Well, it's Churchill. I don't know if you know where that's at.
Churchill Dam?
Yeah. You're sitting up there and well, we're actually going to Sirdoin's Fault, and then we're floating all the way down to Churchill.
What's your favorite bait?
Since watching you, probably a fluke.
Okay, throw it, and you're just going to be drifting and casting?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're fishing for what, largemouth or smallmouth?
Both.
Both. If my guess, what I do when I'm fishing the river behind the house is bass like current breaks, or they like slack water anyway. You know, and so I will throw something like a fluke or a weightless trickworm or something like that, something that I can jerk through that cover and get it out as I'm drifting down.
What about a wacky worm Cinco?
Same sort of deal. Same deal. Whatever you got confidence in is usually the best bait. You know.
I just started bass fishing, so I don't really know what to throw.
Well,
being from Tennessee and fishing a lot of rivers up here, I don't go to a river without a 1/4 ounce rooster tail.
There you go.
If you go to any river in the state of Tennessee with a 1/4 ounce rooster,
is it a white one, Josh? Oh, I think we lost Josh's mic.
Oops.
Probably a white one. But yeah, as you get confidence, you know, like I find I go to these lakes, like the one I went this week, the Lake Lanier, and I fish what everybody else has fished and what I've read in the fishing reports, and I always do best when I go back to the things I have the most confidence in.
Yeah, that's how it is with everything.
Yep, get a few bites on a bait, gain confidence in it. So fish a fluke, fish a trickworm like the same way you would a fish a fluke. You know, a moving bait because you're moving anyway. You know, wacky rig, Cinco, fish things that are simple to fish since you're just getting started, and then you know, just start catching fish. You know, and they're sitting if they're up there to feed next to that current, they're going to jump up and grab something real quick anyway because they don't want to get away in that current.
All right, I usually take 3 rods, and I've usually got a wacky worm, a spinnerbait, and a fluke.
That sounds fine to me.
If not a spinnerbait, I usually throw a jig with a pig, like a chunk on the back of it.
Yeah. Another thing I like to throw is a buzzbait.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best way to catch fish.
Yeah, up and down the river like that. Right behind my house, I have the Savannah River about 150 yards that way, and if I'm going up and down in my boat, I'm throwing something that's moving because I'm just covering water. And that buzzbait, they'll come out of that timber, and you know, the timber. There's a bunch of timber laydowns. They'll come out of it and just whack a buzzbait.
If anyone knows where Boone Lake in Tennessee is, then there was a lot of people out there throwing black buzzbaits, and they had a lot of luck on them.
That's my favorite summertime buzzbait is a black one. Even if it's sunny, I'm throwing a black one. For some stupid reason, I catch fish on it.
Have you been to Boone?
I haven't been to Boone. No.
All right.
Tennessee River Lakes are my favorite, but most of the ones I've been in Alabama and beyond, up to Kentucky and Kentucky Lake, and then all the ones in Alabama are the ones I fish mostly.
How often do you come to Alabama, like Gunnersville, Wilson?
I try to get there. At least we've been going recently. The Bass Resource road trip, and been going for a week, and then I'll stay an extra week and do videos. But I'm going to try to do a Gunnersville trip this fall. Maybe even go fish the Spro Prog tournament. But I haven't decided whether I want to do that.
Well, hey, if you do, you ought to cut me a deal on that guide if you're already going to be here.
I might get you to pay for my trip.
There you go.
The person I fish with, he's always wanting to stay shallow. Is that smart, or during the summer, would you go deep?
There's always fish shallow. If you've got grass, there's going to be fish in the grass. Because their needs in the summertime is they need oxygen. And so they're either going to be in the current where that stirs up the oxygen, or they're going to be in the grass that produces oxygen, or they're going to be deep where the oxygenated water is. So,
shallow shaded area with timber is kind of what I was thinking.
Does it have any current close by?
Not really, unless big boats make waves.
Yeah, that would work. But what the thing is how hot does your water get in the summertime?
It's usually 80 degrees.
Should be okay. You should be able to find them shallow. If it gets up into the mid to high 80s, it starts to lose its ability to hold oxygen, and that's when the fish start going deep.
And then we'll probably throw a drop shot.
Yeah, a drop shot, Carolina rig, stuff like that.
His problem with being out deep, it's only a 12-foot John boat, and those big boats that go by, he thinks he's going to get flipped, which I can understand.
Yeah, I used to fish out of a 14-foot with 8 horse in it, and it's no fun.
Yeah, his is only a 15-horse Mercury, so.
Yeah, be safe. Just you stay shallow. You'll find them. You'll catch them. You may not catch as many as you would out deep, but deep's a whole different ball game anyway. And it's difficult. So.
Yeah, everyone. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
All right. Well, every river that I've been to and every lake like Boone, the average fish that I've ever caught's like 1.5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really catch any big fish. Do you have any tips? I know last hangout you said throwing a jig's like a big fish bait.
Jig is a big fish bait, but it's also you don't get very many bites.
Yeah, I saw on that mystery tackle box you caught like a 1/2 pounder last one where you got all the fish on all the baits.
Yeah. It's what I would do is just keep fishing. Because you haven't been fishing very long, so just keep fishing and you'll eventually catch a big one, and then as you learn more and learn more and learn more, then you'll learn how to target the big ones. I'm still not good at really targeting the big ones. If my best friend was watching this right now, we've been best friends for over 22 years. He still calls me the Ducket master because I can catch the snot out of a limited fish. I just don't always catch the big one. I have to have somebody else that has that touch. But this spring was probably one of the best springs I ever had, catching all those 7s and 6s that I caught. So,
if anyone's in Tennessee, if you know of any ponds, let me know because I'm trying to pond fish.
Tennessee's pretty big.
Tennessee is a big state. Which part?
East.
The East Tennessee up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Just go on Google Earth and then look in your area. You'll find plenty of ponds.
Look in your area, and then you can also go to your county, what's called your county GIS, which it shows you how the plats are divided, and you can figure out who owns the property. And then what I always suggest is this is how I used to find hunting properties: is I'd dress up nice and I'd go knock on the door and I'd ask permission.
Yeah, you made a video on that, didn't you?
Yeah, tell them you're not interested in keeping any fish. You just want a place close by to the house that you can come and fish after school and learn how to fish, and that you'll take care of their lake and you'll clean up after yourself and you'll help them around their yard. And you'd be amazed at how many people will let you go fish their pond if you just ask.
If anyone lives around Warriors Pass State Park, which it isn't a good place to fish except for little bluegill and crappie, but I've got a trail in the front of my yard that leads to the playground at the park. So that's around the area I live. You can find it on Google Earth real easy.
Anybody got any questions?
I got one. Oh, go ahead.
Emil, go ahead.
Yeah, when you were on Lanier, were you all the days were you only fishing brim beds?
No, the first day we were fishing brim beds in the morning, and then we went out deep and started fishing humps and points.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me it's usually a morning thing. Ends around like 9:30.
It's a low light thing, and the reason it was so good all day today is because we didn't have.
Because it was cloudy. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's a
Okay.
low light. Those bass move back out deeper after that, and as soon as the sun even started peeking out at about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock this afternoon, probably about 2 o'clock this afternoon, that bite almost stopped immediately.
Then you just fished brush or.
Yeah, and then we went home because I had to get back here for this. It's a 3-hour drive, so.
Okay, all right.
Since you know JJ, you need to tell him everyone that comes to your hangouts needs to hook him up with a bottle.
You know, that man gives away a lot of bottles of JJ's.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah, he does.
Elderly men are always the nice ones.
I'll tell him you said that. Can I get your address? He's a retired police officer for the DeKalb County Police Department, which DeKalb County is downtown. So he's connected.
Yeah, don't give him my address.
So where's that picture you posted of that 5.5 pound largemouth?
The one I caught this week?
Yeah.
Where? I think
Someone muted you.
Yeah, someone keeps muting you.
Someone muted you.
Yeah, he's gonna get off.
Did I do that? Sorry.
Who?
Said Joshua.
Oh, never mind.
Gosh, somebody did. Somebody came on just to mute me to goof off.
Don't you hate those people?
Yeah, they got nothing better to do. It's just a bit of boredom. Anyway, what were we talking about?
The picture.
The picture. I put it on Instagram, and then I shared it over to Facebook, so it's going to be on my personal Facebook page, I think. I'll put it on the Flukemaster one here shortly. But literally, it's got a 10-pound head, but it's only 5 pounds 11 ounces.
Yeah, I know. When they're post spawn, they're really, really skinny.
Yeah, this one actually had a damaged tail. It didn't look like it was a spawning tail, but she had a sore and she was dripping blood off her tail.
Would you get it on a buzzbait?
Yeah, it was a buzzbait fish.
Never fished a buzzbait on Lanier.
Yeah, it's let me go into Facebook and I'll move that picture over. I'll do it later.
All right.
I think everybody around here, I don't know, we were talking about all those shad. Everybody I've talked to is having a real hard time catching fish, you know, whether it's deep or anything, you know what I mean? I'm watching a lot of these videos on YouTube, and it's crazy how, I know, you know, every lake is different, but it's still really crazy how all these other people are catching fish, you know?
Yeah, me and my dad were on Allatoona last week, and within about 5 hours of fishing, didn't catch anything because of all the school and shad.
Yeah,
Allatoona's tough.
I'll tell you my philosophy behind it. Now, my history is as a deer hunter, and when I first got married, I told my wife, I said, "There's not very many things I'm cocky about, but I'm the best deer hunter that I know." And so this is my thought behind that is when you have a real in deer hunting, when you have a lot of acorns that are falling off the trees, when they have a lot to eat, they don't have to travel very far to eat, and so you don't shoot a lot of deer unless you know how to hunt them that way, and so they can wake up from their nap, walk 10 feet and eat all they need, and come back and lay back down. And so, and the fishing is the same way. The bass don't have to move very far to get to their food because it's everywhere. And so, and they're always full. Whenever they're ready to eat, they just open their mouth and it swims. You know, the fish swim in basically. You know, and so
it's all like reaction strikes, you think?
Yeah, that's all I would do is I'd be throwing reaction baits, trying to get them to just scare the crap out of them and open their mouth. I wouldn't be dragging a jig. I wouldn't be throwing something that make them chase it. I wouldn't, you know. My favorite reaction baits are square bills and rattle traps and things that I can jerk around and not get hung up in the hooks, and you know, and a heavy jig, something I can drop down right in front of their nose, or a heavy Texas rig, something that's going to scare them to bite because they're not eating. So you want to catch them by reaction.
Right. All the fish I have caught have been fat. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the tough part is you just gotta. They're going to open their mouth just because you scared them to death. and they're going to want to, and they just by instinct open their mouth. And that's typical with any time they're shut down or anything else, and they're just not feeding. In order to get a bite, you have to work on that reaction strike.
Right. Well, this is my first year owning a bass boat, so I don't really know. Like how long does this last? Like how long? Like when did the shad kind of,
Pray for freezing water this winter.
Really?
Where do you live at?
In Decatur.
Decatur, Georgia?
No. Wheeler Lake, Decatur, Alabama.
Decatur, Alabama. Okay. Yeah. It's hard to tell if you get really, really cold winter and it gets down into, I think the shad will start spawning like mid-30s. I think when the water gets in the mid-30s or high 30s. I can't remember. But when I was fishing Altoona years ago, we had a really bad shad kill, and I think it was down in the 30s. And so that, and every lake has its ebbs and flows. And so a couple of years we'll have a lot of shad, and they won't have very many. And they'll have a lot, and same thing with bass. The bass will be real big, and they'll be small. Right. So you just have to wait it out and fish accordingly, and then adjust when it's on.
Right. Maybe I just need to go fish Guntersville.
Yeah, that, or just get really good at power fishing and reaction strike fishing.
That's true.
Kevin Van Dam won that tournament on Lay Lake by fishing reaction bait because they won't feed it. And the fish were holding on little clumps of grass, and they were just hanging out waiting to move up to spawn, but the water was still too cold. And so he was ripping the rattle trap and yo-yoing it, jerking it, doing all sorts of crazy crap with it and getting bites. So.
All right, Gina, I've got 2 more questions, then I'll shut up and let you go.
All right.
All right. I've got 2 flutes here. I don't know if you can see them.
All I see is your picture, or your avatar.
Okay. Well, anyway, what I've got here is 2 Zoom flutes, and that video where you did the video of the straightening the tails out of the package, the boiling water.
Yep.
I've got that flute, and then I've got a bubblegum flute. Mm-hmm. Which one would you throw if you're just now fishing that lake?
I wouldn't throw the bubblegum fluke unless I had spotted bass in the lake, because I know spotted bass love that bubblegum color. And I also use that bubblegum fluke as a trailer on a buzzbait. I didn't tell you that, but that's what I like to use a bubblegum fluke for. And instead of a white, put it on a white buzzbait. But my confidence color is that pearl, or that white ice color. So and also pearl, especially if it's shad. And the only time I change those colors is if I'm fishing a small pond that I know there's no shad in, and I'm looking to imitate, bluegill and stuff like that. So I'll use a watermelon or a green pumpkin color. So. All
right. My second question is, I've got this Lipless crankbait. I think everyone else can see it.
Yeah,
what?
A lot of times I can't see it, so.
Okay, it's got rattles and it's a Lipless crankbait, and I was throwing it on my bait caster with monofilament on it. It was 10-pound trilene XL, and I was throwing it out on concrete, and I think one of your videos was you had a red Lipless that you beat it up real bad, and you caught so many fish on it. You said, where would you throw a Lipless crankbait?
I know a lot of people that throw them year round, but my confidence times of the year are spring and fall. And in the spring, I'm trying to imitate the crawfish that are coming out in the springtime, coming out of their little holes. So I'm throwing a red Lipless. And in the fall, I want to imitate the shad, the bait fish. So I'm going to throw a shad color. And I used to take a rattle trap or a Lipless crankbait out of the package and take steel wool and rub the paint. And I wouldn't rub it all the way off. I would just rub it until I got some of it off, and it just kind of beat it up a little bit. And I would, for some stupid reason, I'd catch a lot of fish that way.
Yeah, my neighbor on that Lipless, I swung back real hard thinking that trilene was going to be real strong, and I threw it into my neighbor's yard, and it was in the fall, and it got stuck in this big pile of leaves, and she went up to get the big pile of leaves, and it stuck her in the finger. Oh. She's been mad at me ever since. That was my only Lipless, and I was I was kind of freaking out because I wanted it back. And she's my school nurse at school, so she's still not happy with me. And I'm a diabetic, so I see her every day.
Oh, yeah, you do. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I stuck my wife once when she sat on one of my, or I had laid my rods in her van, and she was getting in the van to get some groceries. A Lipless got a hold of her pants. Yeah, she wasn't too happy with me. It took me a little while to get it out too.
Yeah, my brother, we were wrestling in the yard, and I had a fluke that I had snapped off, and it had a wide gap hook in it. And we were wrestling, and he rolled over, and it caught him in that the tendons in the back of his knee.
Ouch.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you go. I gotta get off to bed.
All right, good night. Thanks for hanging out with me.
All right. Good night.
All right. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah.
Fishing Lanier tomorrow?
Do what now?
Fishing Lanier tomorrow?
No, I'm at home now. I'm 3 hours away from Lanier. My wife starts her new job as a school nurse.
Okay, I thought you drove there from where you live.
No, I just drove back. So.
Okay.
I was there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and came back this afternoon.
Did you make videos there? Or?
No, I left my camera home here, but I wouldn't have had time anyway. I was guiding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to, but I really probably wouldn't have had time. But yeah, I love that lake. I mean, I can't believe it's that clear. You know, it's what you see.
Yeah, I know. I was out there today, and I was in like fishing a brush pile in like 15 feet, and I could see the top of the brush pile. It was insane.
It's the clearest I've seen that lake in a long time. I just drove back.
Doesn't that make it harder to fish like that?
Do what now?
I said, doesn't it make it harder to fish when the water's clear?
Make long casts.
It's just different colors and different presentations and stuff.
Okay.
It's so clear. It's blue. It's a beautiful color.
Wow.
But yeah, the biggest thing is just use lighter long and make long casts.
Did you make the long cast? Why?
Do what?
Why do you make long casts just to get a bait
Because
away
your
from your
boat,
boat?
it'll get too close to the fish.
Yeah. Get your boat close to the fish and they spook.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to. Had somebody come in that's got some Wisconsin real bad sound coming out of his stuff. So I had to mute him. But anybody else got anything?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I've got a Revo SX Generation 3.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I cast, it will overrun to the point where it'll pull a loop, and I'll have to spend like 10 minutes, trying to get the loop out. But I have to tighten the spool tension knob, and I have to put the brake all the way on to get it to not overrun. Do you know why I'd be doing that?
Ooh.
Yeah, mine does that too.
What are you throwing? Anything? It just doesn't matter what you have on.
I mean, yeah. If I'm trying to get it out there, like if I'm throwing at something, like a target that's like close to me, it doesn't really do it. But if I want to like throw a crankbait out, get a good long cast, it'll overrun every time.
I haven't looked at the inside of those because all I have are the Gen 1s.
Yeah.
What's the brake? Is it a centrifugal brake with a dial, or is it a magnetic, 100% magnetic?
It's got the dial on the side. It's magnetic.
When you open up the plate, what does it have on the inside?
It doesn't have the springs that you can click on and off.
Okay, does it have a dial or anything on the inside?
No.
That's hard. I don't know. I'd still say adjust it to where turn your brake all the way off, and then turn your cast control knob tight, and then push your button, loosen your cast control knob until it just barely starts to fall, and then turn your brake halfway up, and does that. I don't know. I've never had a reel do that. And like
I've done what you just said, and it'll still overrun just with that kind of setting. So I have to turn the brake all the way on and the cast control knob all the way tight then I can't cast anywhere.
Contact Abu's customer support. They have a really good customer service.
I got you.
Yeah, they're awesome, and that's probably the reason why I've stayed with them for so many years. Is that if I want a part, I call their parts the department, buy a part, and they send it to me, and I have it in a few days, and then their customer support is always, and they speak English, and good to talk to them.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
All right, see you later.
All right, man. Take it easy. Anybody else?
If not,
You got any questions? All right. Well, it's 11:04. I'm going to stop my broadcast. Let me go ahead and give an ending so I can edit this later on. So,
can you answer my question really quick?
yeah, go ahead and ask a question.
All right. Well, I live up north in New York, so don't hate me, but I only bang fish, and I only have one spinning rod really. And in the spring, it was really easy because all the smallmouth they're all up shallow, and I could catch really decent ones without casting really far.
Mm-hmm.
But lately in the summer, they don't go deep, right? So it has a mixture of smallmouth and largemouth.
Right.
And like the only way I'd be able to get any smallmouth lately is to cast like a pretty heavy drop shot and just kind of let it do its thing out there. But do you have any your opinion on like something to catch really far that's different than a drop shot that you could probably catch something with?
Anything that's like aerodynamic, like a lipless crankbait.
Yeah, they were working really well in the spring, but now there's like some grass that's all shallow.
Yeah.
But out deep there's no grass. But if I'd reel it in shallow, it'd probably catch a lot of grass.
Yeah, a Carolina rig. Something like that, because the Carolina rig's designed to fit catching the grass or to fish in the grass. And like a half-ounce Carolina rig, medium heavy, 7-foot, 7'3" rod. You usually can chunk those things quite a ways.
Yeah.
Those are the first two that come to mind, really.
All right.
Anything else off the top of my head? You can try, instead of just the drop shot, try the drop shot with a heavy shaky head underneath it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Use the heavy shaky head as the weight. Another option. So I need to get up there. I need to fish some of the lakes up there just to see what you guys have to go through, so I can help a little bit better. One of these days I'll get up there. I've got a couple of invites I need to take advantage of.
Oh yeah, smallmouth they're a blast, man.
Yeah, dude. I want to go to Lake Erie something really bad.
Yeah, I fish in the Niagara, so
yeah,
right off of Lake Erie.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, it's 11:07, and I haven't seen my wife in 4 days. I'm gonna go kiss my kids goodbye, good night, and I'm gonna go to bed. So anyway, well, y'all take it easy. Thanks for joining in. And like I always say, visit bassresource.com for the answer to all your questions about bass fishing. Have a great day. You guys take care. Thanks for joining.
All right, man.
Thanks, Gene.
Like I said, next week I'm going to try to do every 30 minutes. I'll put a timer on my phone, and I'll try to start bumping people off every 30 minutes.
That'd be a good idea.
So
yeah.
I'm still learning this, so be patient with me.
All right.
Hey, Gene.
All right.
Take it easy.
All right, good night.
See you, man.
See you.